We want to welcome Kaylee and Carolyn, who are going to be providing interpretation for R.M. and I. Please connect with us if you would like to find out about how you can bring ASL interpretation to all of your events, all of your meetings, so that we can start to tackle autism. See what I did there? See what I did? It's almost like that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hey, adopting DEI practices shouldn't be a complex task, and we're here to guide the way. If you haven't taken our Sojourn DEI journey audit, I want to encourage you to do that today. And actually, now that I say that out loud, does that rhyme? Adopting DEI practices shouldn't be a complex task. We're here to guide the way. Take the Sojourn DEI journey audit today. Oh my God, I'm a rapper. I'm amazing. The Sojourn DEI journey audit will help you come up with a DEI strategy in just under 20 minutes. So log on at Sojourn DEI and take that to get started. Whew, that was a mouthful. So I think it's time for a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath together. Inhale in. And exhale out. Let's delve in. Today, we are unlearning autism, or we are beginning our journey around unlearning autism, and I am joined by R.M. Horrell. That's them on the left. I'm on the right. They're on the left. R.M. is the CEO of Mozzeria, Inc. in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco, California, one of the most successful deaf-owned and deaf-operated restaurant chains in the world. Prior to this role, R.M. was Senior Program Manager for CSD Social Venture Fund. Check it out if you haven't already. Managing contracts, programs, and projects for investment partners. R.M. serves as President of the Community Action Partnership of Sonoma Board of Directors and has since 2020. I'm like, I don't think I can think of anything I've done since 2020. That's why I know you're a better leader than I am, R.M. R.M. has more than 15 years of teaching experience, having been a deaf education teacher and a school principal. Beyond this, they are also the CEO and co-founder of a boutique coffee roasting company, Big Bully Roasters, based in Sonoma County, California. If you're looking for some holiday gift ideas, Big Bully Roasters ships all over the country, maybe even internationally. So that would be a perfect stocking stuffer, perfect little gift under the menorah, under the Kwanzaa table. Big Bully Roasters coffee. When not working, R.M. enjoys science fiction, tooling around in the garden, and spending time with family. Welcome, R.M. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for that very nice introduction. I'm really happy to be here. It's a very special experience for me. And I want to acknowledge you and thank you for being able to select my two preferred interpreters for this event. I really value this, and it's a wonderful experience to be able to be myself and to sign in the way that is most natural and express myself in the way that I'm most comfortable with. So thank you for that.
This is Lindsey. I think there are probably a lot of people already who are going, what is autism? What is that? How do you define that? Can we start there today? How would you define autism, R.M.?
Yes, autism. What is autism? It's quite a very traditional ism. It's an old ism. It's really been a long-standing ism. And the most simple way to put it is that autism is a system that is designed to give privilege to hearing people and power to those hearing people. And if you have proximity to the hearingness, you are also awarded that same power and privilege. So if you think about hearing or deafness, it's on a spectrum. So you have hearing people on one end of the spectrum. Everyone is designed for that end of the spectrum. Everything is designed for that end of the spectrum. So we think about fire alarms, smoke alarms, when you want to order food at a restaurant. Police trainings, again, are all focused on spoken English, all depending on having a certain level of auditory access. When we get to the other end of the spectrum, we have the deaf identity. We have people who are hard of hearing that fall in the middle of that continuum. I myself am hard of hearing. I do have the privilege of being able to speak. So I have speaking privilege. So that gives me more proximity to hearingness. And that's why so often I choose to sign, which is my preferred language, because that's my home language, that's my heart language, that's my identity language, even though I do have that proximity to hearingness. And I do use that privilege, and I do benefit from it as well. But the system is created to make sure that we separate that hearing and deafness. And it's not unintentional. It is very intentionally designed that way. When we think of audiograms, the purpose of an audiogram is to tell you how hearing you are or how deaf you are. And that is with the intention of designing what box you get to put in and what level of privilege you are afforded. You know, what other purpose is there for an audiogram, right? What else do we need it for if not that? You know, it tells me if I'm going to be hearing to go to a traditional public school, or if I'll go to a deaf school, where do I fit? Really is to segregate folks. And it really does a good job of segregating hard of hearing folks from the larger deaf community. So really, the main message here is that it's a system that is designed to elevate those who can hear and deeply oppress those who are deaf or cannot.
This is Lindsey. I love when we start like this, like, let's just get into the shit, right? From, thought one. I think, let me name myself in that I think that there's an ability in naming my own privilege to move through the world, never thinking about, never thinking about lots of things in which I have privilege. And that is often something that we are working to counter when we come together each month to have these conversations. But when I reflect on the learning, the process, the questioning that got us even together for today's episode, it was, as it always is, that unique balance between what I thought I knew, what I don't know, and my shame for not knowing it. And I think that when we start our conversation so concretely with that awareness of that segregation, that separation, that alienation of any group of people, it's really easy for us at the beginning of these conversations to retreat completely. We go, oh, that's such a big problem, and it's so big that I'm just going to intellectually tap out. In your work, in your career, which has, been across various industries, across various skill sets, been tackling this, how do you, RM, keep people engaged in the conversation?
Ooh. Well, first off, I think firstly, it's about showing up. I show up as authentically as I can, as authentically as I know how, as authentically as is safe, as I am comfortable, as I'm welcomed in this space. That's the level of authenticity I show up with. And that's my starting point, and it trickles from there. I don't want to start from the abstract. I start from me, who I am at my center, my identity, my experiences, my background. And I think it's really important to me when we're talking about the intersectionality of deaf identities, because I also move through the world as a privileged white individual, as someone who is represented by the majority. And that is a different experience as well. We cannot process deaf identities without also talking about intersectional identities that fall within the spectrum of the deaf community. My own background, my own experiences, yes, but that's only one of a continuum of the world of deafness. There's no just one deaf identity. It cannot all be encompassed in one. So when we're talking about this, my first job is to show up authentically and fully as myself. And to name that what I have today is not everything, that this is going to come from the perspective of white privilege. It's going to come from the perspective of having majority privilege, size privilege, access to information privilege, spoken language privilege, the list goes on. And I think so often, as you mentioned, that we shy away from being able to talk about our own privilege because, I've experienced a lot of discrimination. I do and continue to experience a lot of discrimination, job opportunities, unjust pay, employment opportunities, etc. Many things I faced. But that doesn't take away from my white privilege. Mm-hmm. That is entirely separate from my white privilege. And that's an important part of the analysis of any ism, is not to make the false comparison to other isms, because everything is intersectional. So everything's going to show up on that dialectic of both having the marginalized identities and the privileged identities. So for example, many white deaf people will make comparisons to the deaf experience and the Black experience. And that's wrong in so many ways. And it's most wrong because it denies the experience of Black deaf individuals who are both Black and deaf. So we cannot address the analysis of isms under the guise of comparing them to another.
This is Lindsey. I hope you all got your really good snacks, because you can see where this conversation is going today. We're not bullshitting up here. RM, talk to me about the experience of visioning and stepping into the CEO role at Mozzeria. What was the intent? What was the statement, the impact that Mozzeria wanted to have as it pertains to advancing justice within an Audist society, as it pertains to income equality within disability justice? What is the vision there?
Wow. So I have two separate thoughts about that topic. So first, I don't know if folks know what Mozzeria is, but Mozzeria is not just deaf-owned, but it is also deaf-owned and operated, deaf-centered, deaf-led, and it spotlights deaf folks, and it spotlights a very important element of deaf excellence. So it's not just deaf people doing what hearing people do. It's deaf people doing what deaf people do. In public, without shame, without fear. I don't know if you've heard the phrase deaf cringe, where we'll shrink ourselves. Say, I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind writing that down, if you wouldn't mind getting an interpreter, if you wouldn't mind turning the captions on, we shrink ourselves smaller and smaller. That deaf embarrassment, that deaf shame, that deaf fear, and it's a very isolating experience. And that is internalized autism. So now at Mozzeria, it is open. It is deafness. It's present. It's centered. It's designed by deaf staff, by deaf language. It's deaf-led. It's deaf everything. And there's no place for deaf cringe. Everyone on the staff in Mozzeria, from the back of the house to the kitchen, to the front of the house at the host, to our chefs, our general manager, our marketing director, deaf. Everyone is deaf. And it's not based on hearing, but it's based on that identity of deafness. Being proud and out and open and loud about your deafness and exposing deafness and excellence within this. And so I say that because the role of Mozzeria is not just like any other business that we want to compare ourselves to the hearing standards or hearing structure. No. We do not consider hearing people to be the standard. They're not our standard. So I'm not going to compare myself to a hearing run business and what they do. I'm going to show what we can do in an unashamed way. And so that's important for us as deaf people to see that setting. I have staff work for me that I taught previously when they were in elementary school. And now they're adults, they're in graduate school, and they're working at Mozzeria. And that means something to them. And that means something to me. Because Mozzeria exists as an example that we can be fully authentic without falling into the trap of comparing ourselves to hearing society or hearing things. We have what deaf people needs. We have lighting. We have video phones. We have light alarms. We have an open concept. So you can see everything from the front of the house to the back. We have an open stove. So we're not following those hearing standards in restaurant designs. We threw out the playbook and started from scratch. We made it our own. And that's why I love this job. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna let you know right now, I'm not going anywhere. I love this job. It's good food, it's good people, and it's a good mission. And now I have a platform. And I have the platform to make change where I believe in. And to elevate the DEI work as being the center of our work. Aside from profit, we're going to elevate community connections and community involvement now, not after the profit's there, but from the beginning. Because far too often, well-meaning companies will say, "Oh no, we'll get the diversity mission. We'll involve more community support later, after we get the business, after we get that bottom line going," right? No. From day one, diversity of our team, diversity of thought, diversity in worldview, of our lived experiences, of our access needs. All total, our shape, our foundation, the holistic approach of our company has been diverse from the start. And that's why I accepted this position.
This is Lindsey. I was kind of laughing because in the lead up to the show, I was reading the email exchanges you were having with Elizabeth and the rest of the production team for Unlearning. And I was taking my own fucking notes, like, this is how you ask for what you want and for your needs as a diverse person to be met. As a Black woman living in this society, I was like, all right, R.M, I get it. I'm going to start taking some notes on how I start showing up into spaces and being like, do not ask to touch my hair. Just, I know, it looks fantastic. My locks have grown to be very long. Do not ask to touch my hair. But it's that practice that all of us can relate to of what it takes to ask for our needs to be met, our boundaries to be respected. And as you were talking, I'm thinking about, deaf cringe and what we hear from our community about the experience of masking, what we hear from our community about the experience of code switching, and all the ways that within our oppressive society, we ask people to play it small, to fit in, to be safe, to assimilate to some external standard. Yeah. In your own journey, just you in your own journey, what has that process been to stop playing it small, to push back on that expectation that diversity is tolerated right up until the point that you make me think about my privilege. You make me think that I might have to change my behaviors. What inside you has made you stronger in that practice?
Wow. That's a loaded one. Because I haven't yet really become skilled in this yet, not fully. I mean, honestly, I'm still in the process of unpacking my own internalized autism, my own fears. It's really difficult to, I still code switch a lot. I can't emphasize that enough. Sometimes I do it with skill, but most of the time it's as a reaction. But what makes it easier, several things. Surrounding myself like people like you, Lindsey, with people who are doing the work, who are people who are actively in the process of moving themselves forward and making change in the world, and involving me in that, asking me to analyze my own privilege, my own guilt, and my contributions to white supremacy, my contributions to colonization, both, mental colonization, my own contributions to ism in those internalized ways as well as the unknown biases that we carry. So part of this workshop is, this kind of work involves me doing my own self-analysis and unpacking and seeing what I find and thinking, oh shit, wow, there's even more that I'm finding over time. And, what I've seen, practices that aren't fair, are unhealthy. And again, really, it's going back to that first answer that I gave, which it's about how you show up and that it needs to be authentically. And you can't be truly authentic until you've learned yourself who you are. And you can't learn yourself until you start that unpacking process. And you can't unpack until you've experienced the world, right? So we keep working backwards on that, on where we really need to start the work, where this work begins. And I'm still working on it. And that's also why I mentioned having my two preferred interpreters here. That's something that maybe hearing people will hear and think nothing of it. And they didn't realize how important it was for me. But the fear of that, trusting someone else, giving them my voice, trusting their worldview and how they will use that to interpret my words appropriately, trusting that they're actually doing the work to unpack their privilege enough to know what I'm even talking about. And how, it started with that first meeting, right? With a new interpreter. We talk about how it's impossible to have that on this platform. So that's when I emailed Elizabeth and I said, I need these 2 interpreters. And that way I can just trust, right? And just be in the moment, because my message is not only for hearing people. My message is to my deaf community as well, to my members, to hard of hearing, my children, my friends, my family, my staff, to my coworkers, to people I look up to people who look up to me. I want to be able to show up authentically for all of these folks and to be able to sign using our home language and not have to revert to speech. I don't want to make deaf people second again, which would be happening if I were to use my voice. Again, it started with me telling you that I want my interpreters. And that was about equal access to my information, my thoughts for you all. And I couldn't be authentic without that level of trust, that level of safety, that level of confidence from the jump.
This is Lindsey. I have 500 follow-up questions. Now I have to try to choose one. First, and a complete tangent, one of Will Smith's lesser-known movies is a movie called Collateral Beauty, and everybody should definitely watch it as we slow down at end of year. If anything, Helen Mirren plays death. So that's all you need to know. Go watch it. But there's this moment where Death, as played by Helen Mirren, is saying to the main female protagonist, I don't know the actress's name, that's the thing she loves about death, is all the collateral beauty. And I set that up to say, do you think that there's something, and of all the people we've spoken to this year, you were saying something about the importance of your deaf community. And yeah, look, everybody, oppression sucks, racism sucks, autism sucks, sexism sucks, religious imperialism sucks, and on and on and on. And there's a type of collateral beauty about having a community, and a community that you are responsible to in some way. A community that is defined. Now, it is defined based on another, a standard, and we're often born into it or somehow come into that community because we are considered not the standard. But have you found a type of collateral beauty in knowing I am a part of the deaf community?
Oh, fuck yes. Oh my God. Yes. I mean, I don't want to be hearing. I do not want that. I would not be myself without being deaf. That's a part of me. My children, I have 4 children. 3 are deaf. The youngest is hard of hearing. So to have them without that part of their identity, I mean, no, I can't imagine it. I love it. And again, so often hearing people will assume that deafness is a sub-hearing identity. It's substandard to hearing identity. You know, that it's extra hearing, that it's outside of the hearing identity. And I believe that it's fully, I believe it's not sub, it is outside of it. It's not substandard, it's completely separate. It's not better, it's not one's not better or worse, it's completely separate. But we're stuck in a system that is designed that we have had to fight for that equity, that we've had to fight for that hearing adjacency. But on our own, in our own world, it's beautiful. There's so much deaf joy. There's so much, there's deafness, it's romantic, it's silly, it's beautiful. It's, deaf romance is different than hearing romance, right? Deaf humor is different from hearing humor. Deaf joy, there's a commonality, right? But deaf joy deaf excellence, deaf, when we see it, I mean, my daughter, right? My second child is deaf, right? One of the youngest deaf, will graduate from vet school. One of the youngest deaf vets, and will be the only deaf vet. It was the only deaf vet in that program. And so faced so many challenges, has 1 year left to graduate now. And you just have no idea how. I mean, that, if she was just some other hearing girl, what would her journey be? What would it look like? Now, I do want her to have the same access, the same privilege that hearing people do, of course. But that does not mean that you have to remove deafness to arrive at the hearing part. It's about the system that is fucked up, that's causing that disparity. It's not about the ability to hear or the ability to speak. It's about the system that's wrong, not the individual, not my daughter. I love our language. You know, with the two of us, we're taking scuba lessons or scuba diving, we're fully masked, and we're still signing the whole way. It's easy. We can communicate underwater. It's so easy. Hearing folks, you can't do it. Sorry, but you can, right? When you're in a noisy area, all the hearing people depend on me to help order food and drink at the bar, because I'm the one that's skilled in communicating, right? So again, that's something that's beautiful, that's outside of that hearingness. But we're stuck in a system that's not designed by us. That's not designed for us. That's not designed with us in mind. That we're there as an afterthought that will catch up later. And again, that's not by mistake. So in the 1880s in Milan, 1880, in Milan, there was an international Congress of deaf folks that met and discussed, what do we need to do with deaf ed? What is the future of deaf ed going to look like? What are we going to do? There was this discussion. But who was involved? All hearing people. And they agreed that sign language was not the best, that we needed to emphasize speech instead. That sign was somehow less than speech, that was monkey-like gestures. That was a monkey language. That speech was a true and pure language. And they banned sign language. You know, our elders in the deaf community that grew up in the 20s, the 40s, the 60s, even up to the 70s, and even still today, that impact is still there today from the Milan Conference. Deaf ed, you know, the main teachers in deaf ed, it's still hearing folks, majority hearing people to this day. And not just hearing people who, when I mean hearing people, I mean they have a hearing worldview. They have hearing privilege. They have hearing perspective. They have a hearing lived experience. They have hearing values. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong on their own, right? That's not wrong on its own. But when it's used to represent something that's supposed to be centering us, where are we? So it's really important to name all of those things.
This is Lindsey. And first of all, what the fuck is up with the association with monkeys and like any oppressed people? Can we just talk about, no, we don't need to talk about that, but leave them freaking monkeys alone. Like they're just trying to do their own thing. RM, somebody on this call is wondering, what do I do next? So I'm activated, I'm unlearning, I'm excited, I'm energized. I'm thinking about Mozzeria and what it means to switch from hearing-centered to deaf-centered. And I want to bring this to my workplace. I want to bring it to my place of worship. I want to bring it to my friend group. What is your recommendation? What's the first step, and a second and a third?
Oof. Well, first is to do it. Just, I mean, even here right now, showing up, right? You're doing it. Listening, joining, interacting, digesting, unpacking, engaging. You can't do anything until you finish that first step of what's happening right now. And you don't want to be in that race to fix the problem. We have to start with our internal contributions to the system first. And I think that process is very important. And at the same time, you know, when we're talking about hiring, hire deaf people. Period. We do good stuff. You know, we're good at stuff. Hire us. Really. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, just this morning, oh, this is a little bit off, but it'll come back. So Mozzeria is owned by a company called CSDF. That company supports 15 different deaf-owned businesses around the country. So today we had a roundtable, all of us. We had deaf filmmakers, you know, deaf food companies, deaf therapists, deaf agents, deaf therapeutic agencies, deaf breweries, all sorts of deaf-owned businesses from all different types of industries. And we were sharing that. We got to share a table in space today. And we never mentioned anything related to hearing values. We just enjoyed our deaf-centered safe space. And we're in, you know, and how we move through the world. We, you know, partnering is important to have those healthy relationships within the hearing community. And I'm sorry, I know it was a little bit off topic, but we're getting back to my point here. So this is a great start. You know, we have this organization provides consulting, bookkeeping. And if you have a job opening, you know, at your agency, there's always, you know, marketing. It's always happening in the same place, right? And if you do that, you're always going to get the same applicants every time. But if you have a deaf consultant, ask them, how can I better engage deaf applicants? If you have a disabled consultant, how can I best engage disabled applicants? You know, if your company is run by majority white folks and you don't have enough BIPOC representation, how can you get more diversity in the team where you're not getting the same circle of people every time? Diversity of your board, diversity of your team, diversity of leadership. You can't grow and make connections in an area you don't have access to. So that's an important step. Now, the third is do not ask for free support from the marginalized community, period. Don't do it. Pay your consultants, pay your teachers, pay your tutors. If you have a DEI specialist that comes to your agency to talk about how to promote or uplift X, Y, and Z, you know, and they're using their lived experience and their lived oppression, and they're giving that there to educate your organization, and you profit from that, right? So invest. Do not take advantage. Don't divest, but invest in these organizations and these people. And once again, we cannot wait for the profit margin to reach a certain point before we invest in DEI work. It has to start from day one. Before you even open the building, before you even design your processes, before you even name your company, before you even go for that license registration, start with a diverse group, a diverse team. And having that appropriate representation so that appropriately reflects the community. So, you think about that old window design of Mozzeria in DC, right? There used to have this red color strip right through it. So when we verse designed that window, they didn't check in with the old team didn't check in. We didn't check in with the deaf blind community, but it was hard to see through with that color. So we took out that red stripe. But that was a lesson learned for us, right? That we need to do this stuff ahead of time. It can't be a reaction. And so our marketing directors here on this call, actually, I see them. But he worked hard to make sure, to double check, to make sure that what we designed was representative of BIPOC people, that represented the community. We had the best lighting, right? That was accessible for deaf, blind, deaf, disabled people. The list goes on. We wanted to make sure that we had equitable practices from the beginning, and that it wasn't a game of playing catch up and doing it as an afterthought. And that was a long answer, so I apologize.
Lindsey, I want a long answer. Thank you. Yeah, you keep saying, "Oof," before answering these questions. You knew these questions were going to be loaded. As we wrap up today, I want to switch it, as you said, and I am feeling on today's call, there's a member of our deaf community who doesn't feel like they have the support of a team like you have at Mozzeria around you, that doesn't have a parent who is supportive, doesn't have a workplace that's supportive. What words do you want to leave them with today?
Ooh. You're not wrong. You're not broken. You're not failing to live up to some standard that you don't even have access to. You deserve better. We often look for where we can be safe. So apply to a job where you feel that you have access. I left my legal career to give back to the deaf world. I joined Mozzeria and I felt, even through that, often I felt like, this is a metaphor for me, but imagine a world of deaf people is like a cave underwater. And we just want to breathe freely, but we're stuck and not able to break the surface, right? So we're swimming and we're stuck. There's no way out of that cave, and you start to panic. You're alone. There's no air. You're trying to breach the surface to get that air. Air is deaf spaces. Air is a deaf school, like Gallaudet University, like Mozzeria. Air is deaf-owned businesses. Air is deaf clubs. Air is deaf events. Air is deaf happy hour. But once that's done, throughout the week, you're holding your breath. 2-3 weeks goes on, and you're still treading water, holding your breath until you can reach the surface again. And that really impacts our self-worth. It causes this feeling of isolation. There's this famous concept of dinner table syndrome. Typically, holidays, families get together and they have a meal, all hearing folks across the table, talking across one another. And I've well practiced when to laugh. I look for the visual cues to laugh, haha, oh, good one. Or I'll take control of the whole conversation because, I can't hear you, but I can take over because I know what I'm saying. So it's very, it's a very lonely experience. And there's a very beautiful artwork called The Family Dog. Look it up, The Family Dog. And it really break your heart now that once you know what it's about. But It's a family at the dinner table and they're all talking, you know, and you have the deaf child on the floor, kind of like a dog just sitting there panting, because they have the exact same access that the family dog has. They have access to food, they have access to a bed, they can get in the car. That's it. Food, bed, car. There's no other sign language. That's it. And sometimes it breaks my heart, you know, to do this work. And it should break your heart doing this work. If not, then where is your heart? So what I like to say is, we make space. And you have to be part of that space and allow yourself to set boundaries and say, no, I'm not going to enjoy this hearing event or hearing group without an interpreter. I'm not going to speak at your event without these two interpreters. I'm not going to movies that don't have open captions. I'm not going to an in-person meeting without interpreters in the room. You're allowed to say no. But also, you create that space for yourself. Because when you go to other deaf events, you are going to give to their safe space and allow it to grow and grow and grow and grow. It's kind of like that bubble of safety when you're feeling alone, right? But then when you meet a new person, your bubbles connect and now you're safe together. And the bubble continues to expand as the bubbles connect and get larger and larger and larger. So seek out those opportunities to run. Seek out those opportunities to change the world. Speak to power. Challenge the system. Tear down the system. Light that fire on the system, whatever you need to do. But if we hold perfection as the only goal, we're really going to miss out on the best paths forward. We have to be okay with progression and never settle for it, if that makes sense.
This is Lindsey. It does make sense. Let's burn some shit down. R.M.,
Yeah.
I have a question here.
I just want to name one more thing, as you asked me before about the next steps, right? Follow deaf creators. Read deaf authors. Buy deaf-made items. And if you see sign language on Instagram, ignore the hearing folks. Ignore those signers. Follow deaf content creators. It's their identity. It's their culture. It's their space. And it's their expertise. The other hearing folks, that's called appropriation, and they're taking from us. So follow them. And I mentioned right here in the call, I saw all these name coming up a few times. Rachel, here. Buy her book called Butterfly Cage. That lights a fire to burn down the system. And it's talking about the mainstreaming in deaf ed. It's very powerful work. It's very powerful work. It's beautiful work. And it goes straight to the heart. And it's so well written. And there's many deaf authors. Follow them. And this is the interpreter. Just make sure the captions got it correctly. It's Rachel Zemach. Z-E-M-A-C-H. I'm not sure how it showed up on captions. Yeah, the captions were struggling with the phonetics of it, but it's Z-E-M-A-C-H. Rachel, R-A-C-H-E-L-Z-E-M-A-C-H.
This is Lindsey.
And she's here in the call right now. I saw the name on the participants list. Hello.
This is Lindsey. Amy, if you find a link to the book itself, would you drop that in the chat for us as well? We have a question from Christine. Christine is wondering, I have a friend and colleague who is deaf, and our state and national professional association does nothing to help with making our continuing education accessible for her. They made her split the cost of translation for a 4-day conference with her once. I am mortified and upset and want to advocate for her. What is the standard for requirements for companies, organizations to accommodate? I want to hold them accountable. Can you take that one first, RM? We can add from a DEI consultant.
First, go to your the local state laws as far as accessing interpreters. I'm not sure what state you're in, but they do vary. Now, the legal standards are different. Now, the justice standard says provide access to people who need it at all times, period. That's the just standard. Find a way. Now, the legal standard sometimes vary depending on the state, what kind of event it is, the type of access needed, and it's messy. And it's very, authoritarian often. And it's harder to answer, but let me back up. That idea of splitting the cost, okay, wow. But let me tell you what you can do. Outside of the legal process, outside of what should happen, let me tell you what you can do. Are you ready? Maybe it's time for you to show some receipts and walk out. If a company refuses to provide wheelchair access to my coworkers, I'm not going to work with them anymore. It's done. And I'll make it public. You cannot continue to profit on privilege by means of oppressing someone else. And that's hard. And what we do as privileged people is we need to speak up against the isms. And sometimes it costs us. It just does. And if enough of us walk out, if enough of us stand up to this, if enough of us make a statement, make a stance, make it public, and it impacts their pocketbook, then they'll finally make that change. And I mean, it's awful. But they don't think they'll win then. I'm reading the chat. But it can't be, you're right, it can't be one person. You're right on that. But I give, my company, right, to be equitable. I give my money to agencies that are equitable. I give my business, my time to agencies that are equitable. I give my money, I shop from fair trade companies, right? Any one of us, if anyone said, this company is not safe, then I'm not going to shop there anymore. They're not going to see my money anymore. Even if it's safe to me. If it's not safe for someone else, then it's not safe, period.
This is Lindsey.
It's hard.
This is Lindsey. Is it hard? I think living in alignment with our values is actually quite easy. Sacrificing our privilege is hard. Living in alignment with our values is pretty easy if you strip it back. I'm getting the word.
That's true.
that we are at time, and I'm being pinged because I'll just keep going. And I don't care if you all have other jobs or, you know, something that you're meant to be doing. I'm in my cocoon of happiness. But the producer is reminding me it's not about me. So there's that. All the questions that are coming through, send those through, and we will either try to make sure they find their way to RM, or if they are questions for us and our role as consultants, we will try to support you on that. But RM, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for opening up this space. And I think it's a very important topic. And as I've said before, so often the representation in these spaces is so lacking. So I really appreciate the ability and the opportunity to show up with you. So thank you.
This is Lindsey, as we close this space and we release you into the world, always at this time of year, I want to remind you that my birthday is coming up, and you can get me presents and just kidding. My birthday is coming up, but why I remind you of that is that I happen to be born at this unique intersection between the end of darkness and the beginning of the return to light. And I think that we misunderstand darkness. We misunderstand darkness. And as we conclude our last unlearning for the year, I invite you to enter into some darkness, some solitude, some contemplation, some deep interrogation of the places within you that you would rather hide, not just from the world, but from yourself. And we need that darkness. And I need you to contemplate that darkness within you. Because when we get back in 2024, I need you to bring the light. I need you to bring the light in only the way that you can bring it. I need you to bring the light in bold and beautiful and unique ways that I will never be able to do. And it is only within you that that unique stardust manifests. So go be dark, go be quiet, go hibernate, go heal, go recuperate, go rest up. And then let's light some shit up in 2024. I love you. See you next year.